The morning after our wedding, I was standing in the kitchen of our new house in Charleston, South Carolina, unboxing the last stack of dishes. The sun was shining bright through the windows, making the wood floors almost glow. I was feeling peaceful, humming a little tune while I worked, thinking about how good life was shaping up to be. Just as I slid the final plate into the cupboard, I heard the front door creak open. I figured it was Caleb coming in, so I turned with a smile. But it was not him, it was his mother, Eleanor. She stepped into the kitchen, dressed sharp as ever in some kind of navy blue suit. Her silver hair was curled up neatly, and she held a small, fancy-looking key in her hand. "Good morning, dear," she said, smooth as silk, though something in her tone made the hairs on my neck stand up. "You are not interrupting anything," I told her, even though I was caught off guard. "Would you like a cup of coffee?" "No, thank you," she replied, walking in closer and holding out that key. "This is for the house next door," she said. "I have decided to move in. I will be keeping an eye on things." I just stared at her, not sure I had heard right. "You are moving in next door to supervise me?" I asked. "That is correct," she said, her smile looking more forced now. "Someone needs to make sure Caleb is being looked after properly and that the household is running as it should." Right then, Caleb came walking in. He looked at his mother, then looked at me, and just gave a little shrug. "It is for the best," he said. I felt a rush of things hit me all at once: confusion, anger, disbelief, and if I am being honest, a bit of humor too. But I stayed calm. I smiled and said as evenly as I could, "Actually, I sold that house yesterday." Eleanor's face went pale as her eyes grew wide. "You did what?" "I sold the house next door," I said again. "A sweet couple is moving in next week." Caleb's little smirk vanished. His face turned serious. "Why would you do something like that without talking to me?" "I did not think I needed your permission to make decisions about the homes around ours," I said, keeping my voice level. Eleanor looked like she might explode. "How could you go behind my back like this? I am Caleb's mother. I deserve a place in his life." "You will still have a place," I told her. "But moving in next door just to keep watch over me? That is not going to work." She was gripping the key so tightly, her hands were shaking. "This is not acceptable." "I am sorry you feel that way," I said. "But what is done is done." Caleb looked back and forth between us, tense as can be. "We need to talk about this," he muttered. "Yes," I said, nodding. "But not here. Let us go sit down in the living room." Eleanor let out a loud sigh, but followed us into the living room. We sat down, the air thick with tension you could practically cut with a knife. I looked her straight in the eye and said, "Eleanor, I know you love Caleb deeply. I get it, I really do. But we're just starting our life together now. We need room to grow, just the two of us." She narrowed her eyes at me. "I only want what's best for my son." "And so do I said. "But being right on top of us, watching our every move, that's not going to help anyone. We need the space to build our own way of doing things. Make our own choices." Caleb let out a long breath and ran his fingers through his hair. "Mom, I love you. You know I do. But maybe she's got a point. We need some space." Eleanor's face tightened like stone. "I see. So you're choosing her over me." Caleb spoke gently. "This isn't about choosing sides. It's about setting boundaries. That's all." Without another word, Eleanor stood up fast. "I need some air," she said, and just like that, she walked out the front door and was gone. I looked at Caleb, heart beating hard. "Did I handle that okay?" He gave a slow nod. "I think so. But something tells me this isn't the end of it." "I know," I said, leaning into him a little. "But it's a start." The days that followed were quiet. Too quiet. Eleanor didn't call, didn't visit, nothing. Caleb started to get uneasy. He was used to hearing from her every day. "Maybe we should reach out," he said one night as we sat out on the porch. "She probably just needs a little time," I said. "But if you think it's the right thing, go ahead and call her." He nodded and pulled out his phone. They spoke briefly. When he hung up, his face was hard to read. "She wants to have lunch tomorrow," he said. "Just you and her?" I asked. He shook his head. "She asked for both of us." So the next day, we met her at a little cafe in the heart of downtown. Eleanor was already there when we arrived, sitting up straight like she was bracing for battle. We said hello, placed our orders, and waited. Once the waiter left us alone, she cleared her throat. "I have been thinking," she said. "Maybe I rushed into the whole idea of moving in next door." I gave her a small nod, hoping she would keep going. "I still have my worries," she added, looking right at me. "But I see now I might have crossed a line." "I appreciate that," I said, and I truly meant it. "I want us to have a good relationship, Eleanor. I really do." She let out a breath and her shoulders dropped just a bit. I guess we can try to work on it. Caleb reached across the table and placed his hand over hers. Thank you, Mom. As we walked out of that cafe, something in me softened. Maybe this was the start of something better. I knew we still had a long road ahead of us, but with time and some patience, maybe we could meet somewhere in the middle. A week went by after that lunch, and things stayed quiet. Almost too quiet. Eleanor didn't show up uninvited anymore. No sudden pop-ins, no icy text messages with hidden jabs. Just silence. Caleb said it was a step forward. I was not entirely sure yet. Then one morning, my phone rang. It was a number I did not recognize. I picked it up, and it was Linda, the head of our neighborhood's homeowners association. I had only met her once, back during the house inspection, and she had seemed sweet. Hi there, sweetheart, she said in a warm voice. I just needed to check on something real quick. Eleanor told the homeowners association board she was moving into the house next door to us. She said I had given her permission to completely renovate the place and even fence off part of our backyard so she could make more room for her family. Supposedly, I signed off on all of that. I just stood there, completely stunned. No, I had not approved anything. That house was sold. A couple, the Whitakers, bought it. They were set to move in the following week. Linda, one of the neighbors, paused for a second. That is strange, she said. Eleanor had a contractor out here just yesterday. He took all sorts of measurements and acted like she already owned the place. I hung up, heart racing. That evening, I told my husband, Caleb. He ran his hand through his hair and said, "She told me she was dropping the whole thing. She told me she was giving us space," he added. Wanted to back off. I held up my phone and said, "Well, either she is lying or she has gone off the deep end." He stared at the floor for a moment. "Maybe she is just having a hard time letting go," he said. I looked him in the eye. "No, she is doing things behind our backs." Again, we decided to drive by the house next door. It was dark outside, but the porch light was glowing. There was a folding chair sitting near the front door. A plastic grocery bag was hanging on the doorknob. I walked up and looked through the front window. Someone had set up a blow-up mattress inside. A pillow and a blanket. A tray with teacups was resting on the floor. Eleanor had already moved in. I could hardly believe it. She had somehow gotten into the house. She had been sleeping there, decorating. We called the real estate agent who handled the sale. She was just as shocked as we were. The Whitakers had officially closed on the house last week. No one was supposed to be in that place until move-in day. What Eleanor did was trespassing. Caleb did not sleep a wink that night. Neither did I. The next morning, I walked over and knocked on the door. Eleanor opened it wearing a robe and curlers in her hair, like she had been living there for years. "Oh," she said casually. "You are up early. You do not own this house," I said. "You are not allowed to be here." Her face stayed blank. "I spoke with the Whitakers," she said. "They are such a sweet couple." "What exactly did you work out?" I asked. "I told them I would look after the house until they moved in. Told them I was family." "You are not," I snapped. "And what you are doing is illegal." She stepped closer. Her voice turned cold. "You might be married to my son, but I have known him his whole life. If I think he needs protection, I will step in." Caleb came up behind me, his eyes wide. "Mom," he said, "this has to stop." She looked straight at him. "You think this is about me?" "No. This is about saving you from her." I clenched my jaw. She is lying to everyone. She is manipulating the truth. You might not see it, Caleb, but I do. We ended up calling the police. When they showed up, Eleanor acted like the whole thing was just some little mix-up. "Oh, officer," she said sweetly. "I had permission. I was just helping out the new neighbors." The Whitakers backed us up. Eleanor had never spoken to them. Not once. She had made a copy of the key weeks earlier during a showing. The police removed her from the house. But the damage had already been done. The neighbors looked at us differently now. The whispers had started. Family drama. Crazy mother-in-law. The newlyweds with all the baggage. Eleanor started telling everyone that I was the one who called the police. That I had turned her son against her. Some folks believed her. Caleb and I began arguing nearly every day. He was torn between his loyalty to his mother and what he knew was right. Between the woman who raised him and the one he chose to marry. "You knew she was like this," I said to him one night. "Why did you not warn me?" "She was never this bad," he replied quietly. Or maybe I just never noticed it. A few days later, I received a formal complaint from the homeowners association. It was aimed at me. Noise complaints. Accusations of disturbing the peace. Claims that I was not cooperative. None of it was true. Turned out, Eleanor had a few friends on the board. People she had charmed with baked pies and Sunday prayer meetings. Folks who did not know the full story. She had shifted tactics. If she could not live next door, she would try to drive us out. Caleb tried to stay strong, but I could see him falling apart. Each day, he seemed more exhausted, more unsure. One night, he looked at me and asked, "Do you think we made a mistake getting married?" It felt like someone had hit me in the stomach. I did not answer. Because, honestly, I was not sure anymore. A week after Eleanor was removed, the Whitakers officially moved in. They were a sweet couple in their mid-60s. They loved gardening and watching birds. One Saturday afternoon, they invited us over for lemonade. They seemed excited to make new friends. Their living room was warm and inviting, freshly painted, boxes still stacked along the walls. While we chatted, Mr. Whitaker mentioned something strange. "Did you know there is a hidden panel in the upstairs bedroom closet?" he asked. "Our contractor found it while checking the insulation. Thought maybe it was for electrical wiring." Caleb and I looked at each other. Curiosity got the better of us, and we followed Mr. Whitaker upstairs. He moved a rack of clothes to the side and pushed on the back wall. A wooden panel creaked open. Behind it was a small crawl space. There was a blanket, a bag of toiletries, a box of Eleanor's favorite shortbread cookies, and a notebook. I took a step back like I had seen a ghost. Eleanor had created a secret hideout. She had planned to live there in secret even after the new owners moved in. We asked if we could take the notebook. The Whitakers agreed, as long as we promised to turn it in if it contained anything illegal. That night, Caleb and I sat at our kitchen table flipping through the pages. Inside were detailed notes about me, about us, times I left the house, what I was wearing, conversations I had with neighbors, even screenshots of my social media posts. I found photos, some even snapped through the windows. It felt like she had been keeping tabs on me, like I was under surveillance or part of some federal investigation. But honestly, that was not even the worst of it. Toward the end of that notebook, there were letters. Not just letters, but drafts she had written to a lawyer. Turns out, she was getting ready to fight for custody of a child that didn't even exist yet. She was planning to prove that I was an unfit mother before I had ever become one. By the time I read the last page, my hands were trembling. Caleb sat across from me, staring down at the table, too stunned to speak. "She's been getting ready for a war," I whispered. That night, Caleb went out for a drive by himself. Said he needed to clear his head and think. When he got back around midnight, his face was pale as a ghost. He sat down slowly and said, "This is not just her being controlling. She's not well. She needs help." He had gone over to her apartment, found her walking back and forth in her nightgown, mumbling to herself about protecting the family name. At first, she did not even recognize him. She called him "my sweet little soldier" and tried to feed him soup that was not there. The next morning, Caleb got in touch with her doctor and scheduled an appointment. He made sure she went. That was when they gave the diagnosis. Paranoid delusions. Possibly early-onset dementia. It explained a lot, but understanding it did not make it any easier. Suddenly, we were dealing with something far deeper than just bitterness or payback. We were facing something nobody ever wants to admit. His mother was slipping away. A week later, a large envelope showed up at our house. No return address. Inside was a typed, signed copy of one of those custody letters. Filed. It had already been sent off before the diagnosis. It had reached a lawyer. The lawyer, acting on Eleanor's behalf, sent us a copy of the legal filing. It was official. She had tried to take legal steps to be named the primary guardian of a future child that Caleb and I had not even conceived. We contacted the lawyer immediately. After he reviewed the updated medical records and the information we had gathered, he agreed to drop the case. But that did not undo the damage. Now my name was on record in a family court document. Word got around, and my reputation in the neighborhood took a hit. But what really got to me, what truly hurt, was the loss of peace in my own home. The Whitakers, God bless them, put up security cameras after they discovered the spot where Eleanor had been hiding. They did not feel safe. A week later, they invited us over. "You should see this," Mrs. Whitaker said, placing her laptop in front of us. The video played. It was 3 a.m. There she was, Eleanor, standing in their backyard. Long coat, slippers, unmoving. Just standing there, frozen, eyes locked onto our house for almost 40 minutes. Caleb jumped up so fast he nearly knocked the chair over. We took that video straight to the police. It was not enough to file charges, but it was enough for a restraining order. We filed it that same week. 3 days later, Child Protective Services knocked on our door. We had no children, yet they were there, telling us they received an anonymous tip. Someone reported that the woman living in our home was mentally unstable and possibly dangerous to children. We were stunned. Furious. Caleb asked to see the report. The language in it, it matched Eleanor's notebook exactly. Phrases like emotionally manipulative, unfit to raise a family, unstable behavior. She was still at it. Still trying to ruin everything, even as she unraveled. The agent apologized and said, "Unfortunately, this kind of thing happened more than people knew." Angry exes. Bitter relatives. People lashing out when they feel like they are losing control. The police could not arrest her. Child Protective Services closed the case. But Eleanor was still out there. And now she was spiraling even faster. We had no idea what she might do next. Caleb installed a full security system. I rearranged my routine. We left the lights on all night. I stopped going out alone. But none of it made me feel safe. Because the woman who once wanted to monitor my every move now wanted to ruin me completely. And even with a diagnosis, a restraining order, and all the red flags, no one was stopping her. 3 weeks passed. We heard nothing. No calls. No visits. No strange sightings in the yard. It was too quiet. Unnaturally quiet. Caleb kept telling himself she was finally getting help. I was not convinced. Then one rainy Wednesday, there was a knock at the door. But not the front door. The back. I peeked through the curtain. It was Eleanor. Soaked to the bone. Trembling. Her face was pale, her eyes wide and glassy. I froze. Caleb opened the door slowly, the chain still latched. "Mom, what are you doing here?" She looked at him like she was seeing him for the first time, wild-eyed and worn out. "I need to speak with her," she said, her voice barely more than a whisper. "Alone?" "No," Caleb said firmly. "I have to," she whispered again. Caleb looked back at me. I said nothing. I just looked at her. And then as she met my eyes, and for the first time, I did not see anger. I did not see hatred. I saw fear. "I was wrong," she said softly. "About everything." I stayed behind Caleb. "Then leave," I said. "I mean it," she whispered. "I ruined my son's life. I thought I was protecting him. I did not want him to end up alone." "You nearly destroyed us," I said. She nodded slowly. "I know. That is why I did something." The next day, Caleb got a phone call. Eleanor had gone to the police on her own. She turned in the notebook, the fake legal filings, the letter she had written to Child Protective Services, even the spare keys she had made to the Whitaker's house. She confessed to everything. And she left a letter. For me. In the letter, she wrote, "I wanted to be in charge of everything. Because deep down, I felt like I had nothing else to hold on to. But you pushed back." I hated that at first. Then it hit me. I raised a son who fell in love with a woman strong enough to stand her ground. And that means I must have done something right. "I am sorry. I will accept whatever comes next." 2 days later, she checked herself into a long-term psychiatric facility. On her own. No one forced her. 2 weeks after that, we were jolted awake in the middle of the night by the sound of sirens. The house next door, the Whitaker's place, was on fire. Flames were crawling up to the second story, lighting up the sky. Neighbors were running outside in their pajamas. Smoke was thick and rising fast. Caleb and I ran out, terrified. We called the Whitakers. Thank God, they were fine. They had gone out of town that weekend. No one was inside the house. The investigators came out the next day and said it was arson. But here is where it got strange. Inside the crawlspace, someone had set fire to a bundle of Eleanor's old notebooks and clothes. That hiding spot? Only one person ever knew about it. It turned out Eleanor had slipped out of the facility during an overnight shift change. Somehow, no one noticed for 12 hours. That fire? It was her way of saying goodbye. One last outburst. The fire did not burn the house to the ground, but it left deep black scars on the walls. And on all of us. They found her walking barefoot, 3 miles away from the house. She was muttering something about cleansing the memory. They brought her back. This time, with much tighter supervision. The months that followed were quiet. Life began to settle again. But something inside me still felt off. I kept replaying the beginning of it all in my head. That moment after our wedding, when Eleanor handed me that spare key. I had not pushed back. I just smiled. I played along. Pretended to accept it. I waited until later to fight back. But maybe I should have spoken up right then and there. Maybe I should have told Caleb how serious it felt before everything got so out of control. I let her believe she still had power. I waited too long, like it was some kind of game. Chess moves instead of truth. I held off for revenge instead of choosing honesty. And maybe that made her feel like she had to fight me for control. Now, I'm not saying all of this is my fault. but I know I could have handled things differently. I waited too long to set clear boundaries. I smiled when I should have said, "This needs to stop." By the time I finally spoke up, it was already too late. The battle had already begun. Caleb and I are still together. We are still healing. We go to therapy. We replaced the locks. We put in new cameras. We even got a brand new bedroom set, because I just could not sleep in the old one anymore. The Whitakers ended up moving away, said they needed a clean slate. And honestly, I do not blame them one bit. There are still moments when I catch myself looking out the window, half expecting to see her standing there. Sometimes I wonder if she is still out there, watching us from somewhere. But then I remind myself Caleb and I are stronger now. We made it through. Because when you live through a fire, whether it is made of flames or made of feelings, you do not walk away the same. You come out clearer, sharper, and you make sure no one ever moves in next door to keep tabs on you again. Not ever. Not in this lifetime.